Morning, Bill.
Good morning, Mark. How are you today?
Oh, glorious. Lovely sunny day.
Yes, well, it's in fact, for me, the big day of the week it was on Saturday, and it wasn't the cricket. It was the head of the Yarra, the 8-kilometre boat race.
Oh, did you take part?
I was in there, and then I had to pull out at the last minute.
Okay.
Yeah, never mind. Yeah.
Now, you've been doing well at the rowing, so well done.
Oh, well, you've got to keep fit somehow, don't you?
Yep, very good.
And the cricket has caused a bit of a stir, but you never take any notice when you're doing a program and there's 5 episodes. I wouldn't get too excited after the first one. Things change.
What I think it shows is the influence of the Big Bash and all that in the way the game's played.
That's right. Yeah. No, we'll see a lot more headlines. And the rest of the weekend was taken up with kids' sport, of course.
Of course.
As you know.
And we opened the paper today, this morning, and there's the Christmas tree on the front page with the ex-mayor having a shot at it. Unbelievable. Leave it alone. It's not bad. It's good.
Well, he's not the ex-mayor. He's the clown mayor. Anyway, let's not get political because this morning we're talking with a guest who we've had a bit of a roundabout trial trying to get on board. But we're talking to Lynda Ford, and Lynda has an OAM, which is very impressive. But good morning, Lynda.
Hello, how are you, Mark? Hello, how are you, Bill?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Good.
So, Lynda, we always start with the inevitable first question of where did you go to primary school?
When and where?
Yeah. Well, you don't have to say when.
Just where. Don't give us the year.
No, that's true. I had a bit of a checkered childhood, I have to say. I went to 5 years of primary school in Adelaide and then moved back to Queensland, where I was born, and did the last 2 years of primary school in Brisbane. So 2 or 3 different schools at that time.
Okay. And high school then from primary?
High school, I was still in Brisbane, and so I went to a girls' school on the southern side of Brisbane, the south side of Brisbane, called Our Ladies College.
Okay. And while you were there, did you have any part-time jobs as a student?
Yes, I did. I worked for Woolworths, probably like a lot of kids in those days.
Well,
so I worked there
Lynda,
every Thursday night and every Saturday morning.
Lynda, we can tell people's age by what their first job was, right? It's either Target, Woolworths, or here in Victoria they might have said Safeway. And the older you get, you go back to paper rounds. Right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's right. Well, we still had them in those days. I just didn't ride a bike. So that's probably
that's
why
right.
I didn't do it.
And while you were at high school, any aspirations about where you wanted to go in life?
I wanted to be a psychologist, but I didn't get the points that I needed in order to go and do that study straight out of school. I did get into a course called Modern Asian Studies, which I didn't like, and so I kind of left there after a year, and then worked for a year, and then went back to college. So and then started my undergraduate after that, and then a master's after that.
And what was your master's in?
Criminology and criminal justice.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Now,
fascinating.
Mark, we better go take a step back before we continue on, because Lynda, we didn't introduce you and your occupation and the business that you're now running. So you have your own business called Mosaic. Can you just
That's right.
So I'm a great follower of Stephen Covey. Begin with the end in mind. So let's begin with where you are now, and could you describe Mosaic?
Okay, so multiculturalism has been Australia's policy for the last 50 years, and from a couple of recent reviews, interculturalism is seen as an extension of that to actually activate multiculturalism. So I've been working in the area of interculturalism and practicing it for the last 25 or so years, and I've been formally advocating for it since 2009. So I decided that after all of these years of doing this voluntarily, I would start a business where I worked mainly with local governments and some other levels of government and corporations to have them to start looking, or have them to start practicing and creating policies around interculturalism, bringing people together from different cultural backgrounds. So Mosaic focuses on that. And the other element is that I've brought together a collective of other consultants who are working interculturally. So it's got the two parts to it. One is where I do a lot of work. The other is where I work with other consultants to do specific projects. And that could be in the area of workshops or education policies and practices, that sort of thing.
Good. All right. We'll now jump back to where we were, but I should have asked you that in the first place.
No, but that's actually okay. That nicely leads in. So you did criminology. So where did you go? What was your first job once you got all your qualifications?
Well, I had already been working. So my first qualification was a diploma in what's called residential care. So working mainly with young people who were in the care of the Department of Children's Services, or young people who are homeless and living in residential accommodation with them. And then from there, I ran a youth service for homeless young people, and then, did a few other things while I was doing my degree part-time. So the degree was in human services, and that took 7 years part-time to get through. I never thought I was going to finish it. And then at that point in time, I had also worked, in a neighbourhood house, and I had also worked in the Logan City Council in Queensland. I did most of my working life in Logan.
So going back a little bit there then, so working with children in care and youth homelessness, is it worse today or better how we deal with it today? That's a loaded question.
Yeah, no, look, I do think it's worse. I think that young people live in such a complex world now that they weren't properly protected back in those days. And I do wonder how on earth they could be protected these days. So there wasn't, the kind of level of supervision that kids need in order for people to have aspirations for them to start with. No one was expecting them to do a trade, for example, or go to uni or finish high school even. They were moved around so often that they had no ability to put roots down anywhere. And that hasn't really changed. And now, because of things like social media and peer, very obvious peer pressure, I think that young people have a much more difficult time of it these days. And if they don't have strong parental guidance, then they can be lost forever. And I think in many ways that's happening now.
And is that what you're seeing in, particularly in Victoria, perhaps a little bit less in New South Wales, the sort of the crime rates of kids in gangs and breaking in? Is that people just looking for money or for a thrill or don't care?
Yeah, the thing with gangs is that it's about a sense of belonging. So if those young people are not getting that sense of belonging from a peer group that is a social, what they call a pro-social peer group, then they're going to find it somewhere else. Yep. And if they're not getting that support from parents, for example, and parents are often at their wits' end. They cannot get support for their kids or their families because the support isn't there from a government perspective. And so what it ends up meaning is that everyone's trying to work out what to do with these young people, and young people are becoming more and more disconnected, looking for that sense of belonging, and they get that from banding together in an antisocial way. So I think it's terrible. I think what's happening at the moment is absolutely terrible for society, but also for those young people. They're ruining their lives, they're ruining their families, they're ruining other people and making them afraid, and they really are just terrifying. You've seen the footage, and
yep.
People walking down the street with machetes or trying to break into houses is terrifying for other people to watch. So I think it is a very bad situation that we're in at the moment.
On the other hand, we interviewed the principal at Northern Bay College the other day. Northern Bay College is the postcode for Corio, and we know the reputation that's been in Corio for a number of years. And he's running some fantastic programs. They've amalgamated 5 or 6 schools.
Yes.
And he's got some incredible work going over there. And one, we keep talking about the negatives. We keep hearing about the negatives. But there's a lot of positives as well. And we never hear those stories, unfortunately. And I'm, I gets a lot of people my age. I see no solution. Or maybe in your position you do see a solution, but my wife and I just sit here and say, well, what the hell is going on?
I know, I agree. And schools are really the most important aspect for kids. So they're the anchor. If kids are moving schools all the time and they don't have any roots set down anywhere, they can't create positive role models. They can't create relationships with people who might provide that kind of embrace, almost like don't get into this lifestyle type thing. So that's why schools are so important. And I was really excited to hear the podcast that you had of the principal. There are solutions to this. There are lots, and this is a problem that happens overseas all the time. And I think there are two aspects. One is that it has to happen at a neighbourhood level. There must be that kind of local support for young people, because that is the antisocial behaviour is happening at that neighbourhood level. Secondly, I think for a lot of young people who were born overseas, it's actually a lack of intercultural support in their lives. And for those young people who are born in Australia, it's also a lack of that broader support. So I think for young people born overseas or second generation young people, it is also very much about knowing other people around them who are from different cultural backgrounds. So I do think it's fixable. But it's fixable in a lot of different ways. It has to be fixed from a number of different angles. It can't just be policing and locking kids away.
So you made a little passing comment there. It occurs overseas, and I know you mentioned you've been overseas. So what took you overseas?
My husband retiring, in inverted commas.
Right.
So I thought, well, he's never going to retire if we don't leave the house, because we've run our business from our home for the last 20 years, 30 years, and so it was time. We wanted to do it in 2009, and then some family stuff happened, so we couldn't do that. 2020, of course, was COVID. We got to 2022, and I thought, if we don't do this now, we might miss every opportunity. And he had always wanted to live in Italy. So I thought, okay, well, let's just do it. And we took our little dog with us and became intrepid travellers for 2 years. Yeah, it was great.
Did you put roots down anywhere then while you were away?
Sorry, say that again?
Did you put roots down somewhere? Did you live somewhere for a period?
Well, we did, but because we were travelling on an Australian visa, we could only be in Europe for 90 days at a time. Yep. So we lived in Italy for 90 days, but we did some travel up to Germany and, a few other places. And then we went to the UK, which, because it's now outside of Europe, was handy for us because it meant that we could go there. And so we ended up house sitting. We stayed for 4 months in the UK and did some house sitting in England and Ireland and also up into Scotland. And then went back to Italy for another 3 months and did quite a lot of travelling through Corsica and Sardinia and Sicily, and then went back to the UK for about 5 months and did a lot of house sitting in England at that second time. So we ended up living in 14 different locations around England and Ireland. Yeah. And always lived outside of town in little villages. So we've made some great friends from those travels, and also some great friends from our Italian times of living there. The last time we were in Italy, we stayed at Lake Garda up north in just not far from Milan and from Lake Como. So we ended up being there about 6 months because my husband was able to get a certain kind of permission from the Italian government to stay more than 90 days. So it was lovely.
Lovely. So linking it all back again, what was your observation of how things are in those countries compared to Australia in terms of youth and multiculturalism? And because all across Europe there's this sort of anti-immigration push these days. So
yeah, it's really interesting, actually. So the time that we spent in the UK and particularly in England were the riots last year in Middle England, so across from sort of Hull to Manchester, that area in between. That was fascinating because it was anti-immigration. It evolved into anti-immigration, but it didn't start off like that. So for me to sort of watch this wave of change about what the purpose of those protests were about, And that was interesting. I think anti-immigration has become something across the world that is unfortunate, and it's also toxic for all of society, not just for migrants. Can you imagine what it must be like to be a different colour and be so visibly different to others that, people yell things out of cars at you as you're walking down the street, that sort of thing. So for me, that part of England was fascinating to watch and that has a multicultural, it's not really a policy anymore, it's a multicultural way of life, really. And then when you go to Italy, France in particular, they have assimilation policies, which is where you are expected to take on all of the life of that particular country. So really, they don't want you bringing your culture in. Of course, you would still practice it, but it's not like a multicultural society where cultures are celebrated and allowed to be practiced within that kind of framework of acceptance. So in a country with assimilation policies, what you get is people needing to fit into the dominant culture. And so you learn Italian, which is a good thing. I think learning the language of the dominant culture is a good thing. But you learn the language, you participate in Italian activities, which again is really good. But regardless of what culture you are, that is not something that's accepted as a multicultural sort of country. And it's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So, Lynda, just quickly, because we've got to move on, can you describe the work that you're doing? And it was called iGen Foundation, with young entrepreneurs, and I think you do have, an emphasis on people from other countries, is that right?
We do. We run generic programs. So iGen Foundation is a charitable organisation that has a board, and it runs a number of different programs. Interculturalism, intercultural programs are one of the aspects, and then the other is entrepreneurship. So all of the things that we run always have an intercultural overlay. Everything we do, if we've got you in the room for 5 minutes, then we will do intercultural knitting together of people. But our entrepreneurship programs focus now on migrants and young people. But again, because we use an intercultural approach, where we talk about focusing on migrants, we also have opportunities for people from First Nations backgrounds and Australian-born third or more generation young people or others to join in and participate in those programs. If we were just running multicultural programs, that would be for migrants only. But because we're running an intercultural program, we try to make sure that we're building connections between First Nations peoples and also third or more generation Australians, European Australians. So that could be everything from a one-day workshop to a weekend, or it could be a 6 or 12-month program that we're running, depending on whatever the project is.
All right, so if I'm a young person, I enter your program, what's the expected outcome you would be looking for at the end of the program?
Yep, so if it's something like a business builder weekend, for example, what we would do is by the end of the weekend, you would have thought through your business idea a little bit more. But if it's a 12-month getting down to business program, what we would have done with you over the 12 months is really nailed down your idea and then work towards helping you start a business. Some young people get to the end of that 12 months and think, I'm really not cut out to run a business. But what they would have learned over the 12 months is the basics of entrepreneurship and problem solving. And then we want people to be turning that into something that helps their employer, for example. So they become we don't call them this, but they become what are called intrapreneurs. So people who go into other people's businesses and help them build that business because they've learnt the skills of entrepreneurship.
Oh, well, that's interesting. We've got a pending Facebook site, or I think it's there still, Mark, doesn't it?
I think it's there.
Called Maturepreneurs, because we want to focus at the other end. Right, for the over 50s. But I'll tell you a quick story about what you just described, because I know you have taught at TAFE, and you've done a few short courses at TAFE or diplomas like I have. I was lecturing at Vic Uni TAFE, 12 months program for Certificate 4 in Small Business Management, and they were basically for startups. So at the beginning of the year, you might have 32 people in the class, and you would ask them, well, who's going to start a business after this? And all the hands would go up. Halfway through the year, there'd probably be 10 left in the class, and who's going to start a business? And maybe one hand went up. And for the same thing was, and the explanation was, well, I've realised what I don't know, etc., and I'm going to go and get a job and work somewhere else before I come back to my idea of starting a business.
Yep. That's right. And a lot of people have the side hustles too, remember, where they're doing this as they're working.
Yeah, that's right.
Good. It's good. So what's your work with Mosaic, with councils then? How does that tie in this all together?
A lot of the work is around policy development. So at the moment, a lot of councils have what they call multicultural strategies. And it's about really trying to work out how do we create an intercultural action or outcome from that. So again, multi means lots of cultures, and Australia is a multicultural society. Inter means within and between. So interculturalism is how do we bring together people from different backgrounds, and that could be people born overseas, people born in Australia, and First Nations people. So it's really about, within a council, how do we make sure that we're not just providing services to one group of people, but in order to create social cohesion, which is what councils want to do, then we need to be making sure that people are talking to each other. And one way of doing that is through creating policy, which helps councils to work out what they're doing and why they're doing it. So I do some policy work. I also do some helping, like mentoring of teams, and also some assistance with program design, intercultural program design.
So is there a council you're working with you could name that's doing it really well?
Well, there are three actually. So there's Salisbury in South Australia, which is an absolute beacon for interculturalism. Yep. Melton City Council is fabulous, and they have been doing this for a very long time. I think I wrote their first intercultural strategy in 2009. And then Ballarat City Council has been an intercultural council since about 2016. So we're talking about some really long-term experiences of council staff now, and also community impacts.
It's interesting because you wouldn't think Ballarat would be a very big multicultural, but am I being ignorant there?
It's growing. And so in many ways, what you want is an intercultural approach at the very, very beginning of becoming a multicultural community, so that people aren't just kind of, put somewhere without any other networks. And so to have those networks in place, and they've always been very multicultural right back from the Eureka Stockade.
Yes, true. Yep.
But in terms of the most recent migration there, probably over the last 10 or 15 years, there's been larger groups of people. So you do want that intercultural approach at the beginning.
Yeah, that's interesting, Lynda. I was on the board of Lavaduck for about 10 years, and we are known up at Nil, we're the major plant, for the Karen people. And I was there the day they brought up a minibus of people for the very first time, to explain what happened at Lavaduck, etc. And I couldn't believe through the interpreters some of the stories that we heard. But then when we went ahead and decided, yes, we will relocate these families up here, and now, of course, they've, Nil is a great example of how two communities can work together. But I can tell you now, boy, there was some pushback when we first did it. Right, but it was a learning process.
It is, and it's also about preparing for change, and communities can't just be accepted to say, okay, well, everyone just come in, because it is a really big change. If you've got people from a very different cultural background, like Karen Burmese people, for them it's a massive change. They're, not in rainforests anymore, for example. They are now in the middle of Nil. And it's a long way away from any capital city. It's really hot in summer. There's, not a great deal of rainforest at all. And so it's a really different change for them, but also for the community to understand, okay, so why are we getting this kind of food here, these shops? how is it that we can be incorporating people into the lives of our community? And it's not assimilation, it's about integration of people. There's a big difference. And for people to be reaching out and into those communities to say, come in and be part of this community. This is how we do things here. How do you do things in your community? And so it is very much a two-way street.
In hindsight,
so Nil's an example.
In hindsight, we could always have done it better, but thanks to Rotary up there, of course, and I think it was the Anglican Church, they helped that work. And then I was asked to talk to council people at Colac sometime later because they have a big issue down there with the large employers. And my comments to them was, the first thing you do is get the churches on board, you get the service clubs on board, you get community volunteer on board, and you do all that preparation before you even begin. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah, and that was a valuable lesson. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And that really is the only way to do it, because communities have to be ready for it. And I was involved in a project in Western Victoria. I won't say the name of the town, but we went in there to say, look, there are families from this particular cultural background that are indicating an interest to live in this region. And this particular community just said, no, we don't want them here. We won't support them living here. And of course, we would much prefer to know that before people start to move and uproot themselves and their children, in order to be able to go somewhere where they're never going to be wanted and accepted. What a terrible situation. So we were really, really happy with that community being so upfront about it.
And what was the no for? Fear?
Yeah. For fear, for stereotyping, for, not wanting to change the culture of their town, which is a very old town, and really had no change for many years. People, long-term families, lots of people there who know each other. And I don't know that they would have wanted change in any kind of group of maybe 15 or 20 families moving in all at once anyway.
Yeah.
Whether they were, Australian-born families or migrants, they wouldn't have wanted it, I don't think, all at once, which was pretty much didn't happen like that in the long term, but it may well have happened like that, and they didn't want that.
Well, done properly, it can work, and it can work very well.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's right.
All right, Lynda. So how do people reach out to you if they're listening to this and think, we'd like to chat to you? How do they find you?
I think probably LinkedIn is the best way to do that. I'm happy to give phone numbers and email addresses, but certainly through LinkedIn is the easiest way. Yep.
And it's Linda, Lynda Ford?
It's Lynda, Lynda.
Lynda, yep.
Yep, that's right. Ford, Ford, as in car.
Yep.
And then I've got the OAM written behind it on LinkedIn.
So, although people can contact me, Mark, and I'll pass on the details.
We'll pass on the details.
I tried to print off Linda's when I did the internet stalking, Lynda. But I looked at what I saw and thought, I haven't got enough paper to print all this.
So, Lynda, thank you. Love your work. Love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And we probably need a few more people stepping up to get into this space, because we can't fight it. We need to work and make it work. So.
That's right. And really the bottom line for this is that we can never have a cohesive society unless people talk to each other and get to know each other. It's as basic as that. So the more that happens in neighbourhoods and at local government levels, the less crime there will be, the greater the amount of, people wanting to live in their communities. So I really appreciate the time that you've given this morning to be able to talk about this.
That's all right. Lovely to talk to you, and good luck with it as you go forward.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.